This is a video I really didn't want to make, but I've gotten so many questions about the rising crime rate in New York City that we're going to dive into it. We're going to talk my personal experiences, crime stats, what the city's trying to do, and if it's still safe for tourists to visit. You don't want to miss this. Before we get into any statistics, I want to share a story that happened right here at Atlantic Avenue. Adriana and I were waiting for an express train, and a young girl approached us. She was Asian. My first instinct was, okay, maybe she watches the YouTube channel. It happens sometimes, strangers come up to me and say hello, but this wasn't that case. She said to us, "Guys, I'm really afraid right now. Can I ride the subway with you two until I get to my stop?" And we said, "Of course you can, sure." And I felt so bad at that moment that there's many New Yorkers who are in real fear for their safety every time they take the subway. Now, for my tourists watching, I don't want you to panic. I'm not trying to scare you. I still think you should visit, but there's some steps you need to take, and we're gonna get to that later in the video. Statistically speaking, crime is up in every single category in New York City. Grand larceny up almost 70%. Grand larceny auto almost 100% increase. Hate crimes up 121%. All of these numbers should alarm you, but we have to also take into account historical perspectives here. In 1990, there was about 100,000 robberies. In 2021, there was only 13,000. And I know a lot of native New Yorker friends of mine are afraid of those days coming back. They're seeing a spiral right now. And I can even share my own family's history. My parents immigrated to Brooklyn in the late 1970s from Ukraine. My mom got mugged. My dad had the battery from his car stolen 2 separate times. He even tried to chain the hood of his car down, and they still managed to steal his battery. I sincerely hope that New York is not moving back towards those really dark days. In the past, I've said things like crime in New York City is only concentrated in certain areas, but the sad fact is that almost every single police precinct in New York has seen an uptick in crime. Shoplifting has gotten absolutely out of control of late in New York City. In fact, one guy went viral when he was filmed carrying 10 packages of meat outside of a Trader Joe's. As an employee of any of those types of stores, they're told, do not intervene, let them go. Look how bad things have gotten at Duane Reade. To get toothpaste, you have to get an associate. Same thing with toothbrushes, even underwear. I've seen this for expensive electronics before, but for $9 toothpaste, this is wild. Shockingly, the White Claws are totally available and not protected. You know things are getting interesting when they're selling pepper spray on the streets. That Duane Reade actually had security, but there's been stores that have closed in New York City because too many of their goods have been stolen. ActionKid sent me this clip of a 7-Eleven in Astoria. Read that writing right there, shoplifted to death. Now, a lot of this is happening in the bigger corporations because if people tried stealing from certain bodegas, I think the owners would have a serious problem with that. A topic that's on everybody's mind is subway violence. Now, the media is all over this. Anytime there's any incident involving a shoving or a stabbing in the subway, pretty much guaranteed to be front page news, and the media knows what gets clicks. Keep this in mind, 3 million people a day ride the subway. Your odds of having a problem are extremely slim. It's still relatable and it's still sad, it's still tragic because you read about somebody getting slashed on the subway and you think to yourself, that could have been me, that could have been a loved one, that could have been a friend. And that's the real scary thing going on right now. All right, Ben, what's your opinion on the increasing subway violence?
Riding a subway now is totally a different experience than when I first moved into New York. I get my mom calling me every time, did you ride the subway today? It's scary, like riding the subway and reading, seeing all these articles.
Do you think tourists have to be afraid?
Tourists don't have to be afraid, but they have to be careful. Watching videos like this, well, we'll put them in a good spot, I would say.
All right, you're getting a bonus, man. You're getting a bonus. You know what would be a crime in New York? Not getting some of these mini donuts from Cousins Dozens at DeKalb Market. Oh. Here's the question. What is the city doing about all this? The new mayor, Eric Adams, just released a 17-page plan to clean up the subway, and I read all of it so you don't have to. As announced in early January, New Yorkers will continue to see an increased presence of NYPD in subway cars, especially at high priority stations. The following is banned: lying down, sleeping, or outstretching in a way that takes up more than one seat, creating an unsanitary environment by spitting, littering, and more, exhibiting aggressive behavior towards other passengers, using the subway system for any other purpose than transportation, smoking, or open drug use. There's also a passage about outreach for the homeless, and he made some statements that the majority of homeless people are not violent. There have been a lot of high-profile cases about homeless people doing some terrible things in the city. Will it work? We're gonna have to see. This was just announced. There's a pilot program coming where they're gonna add protective doors to 3 subway stations to start. The kind of doors that are really common in many countries around the world, and in hopes of stopping subway shovings and also suicides. I think this is a great step in the right direction. The problem is they did a study a few years ago and found out that only 128 of the 472 stations could even handle it. So this is something that's gonna be ongoing, and don't expect to see protective coverings at every subway station in New York City anytime soon. The city has major problems, and crime needs to be a top concern, especially with the COVID-19 rates waning right now. And I'm not trying to sound pessimistic making this video, because there's millions of people who go about their lives in New York without incident every single day. There's certain things you have to adjust to being a tourist or being a New Yorker. There's definitely one crime you're gonna see daily in New York City, and that's people jumping the turnstiles at subways. And in fact, there was a recent article that said up to 1/3 of people aren't even paying their bus fare anymore. Anytime you go to the subway and you want to feel a little safer, ride in the car with the conductor, and you can find out where that is by locating the indication board right here. Now, Adriana, for example, my wife, when I'm not with her, she always rides in this car. This is very important for my single females watching, especially. Don't stand too close to the edge here. Always stay by the wall, and be aware of who's boarding the subway car that you're in. If anyone is acting erratic, don't be afraid to get up and move to the next car at the next station. That's something a lot of local New Yorkers know to do that tourists don't. I read a lot of these Facebook groups that say, don't wear jewelry on the New York City subway, don't use your cell phone. 90% of people on the train are using their phones. What's more important is that you're paying attention to who is jumping onto each subway car. You know, just the other day, someone walked onto the train, was talking to themselves, looked erratic. They even sat right next to me. Nobody on the train flinched, they were paying attention, and he got off one stop later. And things like that will happen longer you ride the subway, so just be aware of it. For my tourists watching, the areas around Penn Station and Port Authority in Midtown, there's a lot of mentally ill people roaming about, so you have to be aware of that. And if you see something strange, you know, don't be afraid to cross the street. Don't be afraid to turn around. You've got to keep your wits about you, especially in Midtown. Don't get into confrontations with strangers. If someone's being too loud near you, if someone's smoking near you, just move away. Remove yourself from those situations. I've read too many stories about a fight being started over something trivial. Somebody pulls a knife, somebody pulls a gun. You don't ever want to fight with people who have less to lose than you do. I'm gonna give a tip to my tourists watching. I don't think you should ride the subway by yourself after 11 or 12 a.m., especially if you're not comfortable with New York City, and definitely if you're a single woman. Budget some money if you like to go out late for Ubers and Lyfts. It's just one less thing to worry about. The trains take forever on the late night routes, and there's a lot less people around. Women traveling by themselves, you need to listen to this. Be aware of who's around you, especially when you're riding the subway. Is somebody following you? I've heard different stories from women about creepy stuff like this happening to them. So don't zone out when you're in public. This is something I've never talked about on a video, but for the last few years, I always carry pepper spray when I go out. Now, I don't think tourists need to buy this, but if you move to the city, you take the subway a lot, you're out by yourself at night, especially a lot of my women watching, I would rather have this and never need it than need it and not have it. Crime is up, that's a fact. But I didn't make this video to scare you because there's still tons of people moving to New York. Rental prices are still through the roof. I made this to inform you because no matter what, you gotta take care of yourself first when you're here. Another really big topic right now in New York City is the cost of living. And in this video, we break down all the prices so you don't have to. Check it out.